Thank you. I would like to call the July 6th, 2022 City Council meeting to order. And if you are able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Nackstead,
Here.
Vice Mayor Glendenny,
Here.
Councilmember Baisden,
Here.
Councilmember Sonart,
Here.
Councilmember Petty,
Here.
Councilmember Winger.
On the phone.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Council, before we get to the agenda approval, I would like to bring your attention to the laydown material. And we have a item here. It's a requested addition to the packet, and the action is add to item D1. The item is ordinance number 3295-2022, and it's public comment requested by the city clerk. Pleasure of council. To approve?
Are you calling on me, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
You have your light on.
Thank you. Yes, I move for approval of the agenda with the add item D1, request unanimous consent.
I second that.
Any objections? Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda into the record? Are there any, if there's any public comments on any of the consent agendas,
Vice Mayor.
items just read by the clerk,
Vice Mayor
chime in
Glendenny.
later. Say again?
Sorry, Vice Mayor Glendenny. That was the approval of the agenda. Now we need to do the motion for the approval of the consent.
I'm sorry. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda. Pleasure of council.
I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
I second that.
Are there any revisions to the consent agenda from council? Would the clerk please read the consent agenda into the record?
Approval of the regular meeting minutes of June 15th, 2022, brought to you by the city clerk. New business action approval, bills to be ratified, brought by the administration. Action approval, purchase orders over $15,000, brought by the administration. Action approval of a special use permit to Kenai Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center to use and operate the Moose Meat John Cabin, brought to you by the administration. Action approval of a restaurant designation permit filed by Griffin Golf Course LLC, DBA Kenai Golf Course, brought to you by the city clerk. Introduction of ordinance number 3296-2022, accepting and appropriating donations to the Kenai Community Library for the purchase of library materials. Public hearing on August 3rd, 2022. Introduction of ordinance number 3297-2022, amending Kenai Municipal Code 7.15.090, disposal of surplus or obsolete materials and equipment to allow for the police department to dispose of certain surplus and obsolete materials without advertisement, public opportunity, or procedures to obtain the highest price. Public hearing on August 3rd, 2022. Introduction of ordinance number 3298-2022, enacting Kenai Municipal Code Chapter 14.30, floodplain management within Title 14, Planning and Zoning, to regulate land use within the floodplain and authorizing the city to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on August 3rd, 2022. Ordinance number 3299-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Airport Special Revenue and Airport Improvement Capital Project Fund, and authorizing a non-federal reimbursement agreement to provide project support for a medium-intensity approach light system with runway alignment indicator lights, and any other impacts from the Kenai Municipal Airport Runway Rehabilitation Project. Brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on August 3rd, 2022, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on any of the consent items on the agenda just read by the clerk? Are there any remote attendees?
There are no hands raised.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Hearing no objections, the consent agenda is approved. Next, we have scheduled public comments. Mr. Ivan was unable to attend tonight's meeting, and he will be rescheduling for a future time. Next, we have unscheduled public comments. Public is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, 30 minutes aggregate. We have unscheduled public comments. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Yes, sir. Would you please state your name and address?
Rick Baldwin, 3080 Kiminans Court, Kenai. I'm here on another issue, but while I was here, I looked at the resolution for the winter services for the Kenai Multipurpose Facility, and it again nudged me that there's an issue that I wanted to bring before the council, and I have maybe talked with you separately in the past about the name of the facility. That I was one of the people who was involved in putting that facility together initially. There were 10 of us. And in order to make this a saleable item, we called it a multi-purpose facility because we really felt like that it could be expanded into other areas, but our primary objective was building a Kenai rink, a Kenai ice rink. And I've always thought that really it was misnamed as the Kenai Multi-Purpose Facility because it really is an ice rink. And I think that it's better for the city of Kenai really to have that named as an the Kenai rink, or some variant of that. So I just would urge you to take a look at this at your convenience. It's not a big deal, but from a marketing standpoint, I just always like the idea of a Kenai rink. So thank you for listening, indulging that.
Any questions? Thank you. This brings us to public hearings. There were no remote attendees that wish to speak on that issue? Okay. This brings us to public hearings. The first public hearing before us tonight is ordinance number 3295-2022, amending the official zoning map by rezoning certain parcels southeast of Beaver Loop Road along Basin View Way, Kim North Ang Court, Cub Court, Ames Road, and Dolchak Lane from rural residential to rural residential -1. Pleasure of council.
I move to enact ordinance 3295-2022.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3295-2022? And you have 3 minutes, and if you'd please say your name and address for the record. I appreciate it.
My name is Chuck Eubank. I live in Basin View subdivision, 3050 Kiminang Court. We've been within the subdivision for 38 years. One of the first homes built in it. We are in direct opposition of the proposal for RR1. The reasons being, I'll go over them as fast as I can get them for you there. Our main opposition to the rezoning, which there is many, is that this is a clear case of spot zoning I have researched spot zoning time and time again, and I find that this is a clear case of the definition of spot zoning. Many different definitions are written on the subject. The final thing that I find that's wrong with this is the action is in violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which states, the Equal Protection Clause directs that all persons similarly located or situated should be treated alike. Why is this the case? There's two selected properties that are adjacent in an adjacent subdivision on Ames Road, of which is part of the rezoning proposal, currently have conditional use permits. These two properties are allowed to continue with their conditional use permits with no termination in sight unless they go out of the guidelines of the ordinance, okay? And that means if they resell, it goes to a new buyer, okay? It can just continue on. Our property, which has the same Beaver Creek river frontage as the two properties previously addressed, is situated within a quarter mile of 20, I'm saying an estimate of 20 guide businesses that have creek fronted property. We are being penalized, okay, by not being able to have a conditional use permit on our riverfront area. This could increase our taxes. It could devalue our property. Okay. And it certainly doesn't make it attractive to every buyer out there. And as an investment, of which the property is, I would expect that you would think that everybody should be able to get a fair return on their investment if they decide to sell it. And that's not going to be the case on this property.
Go ahead and maybe wrap it up, take a little bit
The
of time.
resolution is simple. Do not approve of proposal, the proposed rezoning. Grandfather all properties with Beaver Creek frontage as the properties currently holding conditional use permits. Let's face it, not all properties are the same. The ones across the street from me don't have any frontage. They don't have river access, okay? This entire thing to me is a big smokescreen. And there has been some different, I addressed the council with a letter about a month ago, and I don't know if everybody's read it or not, okay? And I pretty well outlined my objections to everything. But the only other thing I would like to add is that the rezoning application that you have before you, after reviewing the rezoning application submitted to the zoning board and announced to the city council, we were amazed at the number of incorrect entries that were entered that were said to be true and correct. We would believe that since the application would be part of a historical record, that the planning department, upon receiving it on 4/27 of 22, obviously did not review it, period. Following our list of the areas we found discrepancies that should have been corrected or questioned by the planning department. The date of the signature of the petitioner was 20 years ago. Now that might not be a bad thing, but I would think that that should have been corrected when it was turned in. Number two, the petition states majority of property owners, not lot owners, property owners, of which we found that in several cases, the same person signed the application several times. Several entries were found to be duplicate. One lot, two signatures. One entry shows that a person owns the parcel is different than the one they signed for. Why is Basin View subdivision the only one listed at the top of the signature pages on the application? I guess they didn't have enough room to put the rest of them up there. Our closing remarks In our opinion, you, the city council, represent a city that you can be proud of. Our family, along with many more, including you, were here before BTL. That's before traffic lights. Our community as one that offers a great way of life and harmony. Please don't change it, the way of life, by adopting more regulations just to enforce the ones that we already have on the books. The conditional use permits are not being enforced, okay, by the city of Kenai. It's pretty obvious. There's a reputation out there with the city of Kenai. If you put in a permit, it's rubber stamped and goes right through. So I'm going to finish up, okay. I'm sorry, and I appreciate and thank you for your time.
Just 1 minute.
Yes.
Any questions for Mr. Eubanks? Let's see. I have one. You'd mentioned about the different subdivisions that are incorporated in this. There was, it says only Basin View, but there are others, and they have different
Probably
management
6
schemes.
additional subdivisions,
Okay. Do each of them have covenants or?
none that I know of.
Okay, so there's nothing to.
We're the only ones that have a covenant in our subdivision.
And have they been enforced?
We went years without having a homeowners association meeting. We had one over a year ago. It calls for a homeowners association yearly, okay? We haven't had one since that, okay? The only reason we had the homeowners association at that time was to turn down a conditional use permit for a guide business that was coming in on, in the subdivision itself, on Dolchek Lane. There's a paranoia here about, we've got this big guide invasion going on, and guides are trying to get into the community and get one of the lots in the community. Let me tell you, the guides have had an invasion going on for 30 years. It hadn't changed any. And our covenants has worked well for 30 years, for the 38 years we've been there, okay? And I just have no mind of why we need to change it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Jerry Huff. I live at 765 Ames Road. That's my primary residence. Also own a piece of property at 710 Dolchok. I've lived in the community for 35 years. I was Chuck's neighbor for quite a while, still am. The reason this application came about is, like Chuck says, was the application for a guide business and a lodge on Dolchok Street. And that kind of lit the hornet's nest up in this community, this area, to try to do something to try to protect our neighborhood from businesses of this type in this area. Because we feel like it's gonna, if that does get going, especially on the creek, and the creek is a common thread between all of our subdivisions. Our subdivisions are all different names, and then for me, that's a plating issue. That really doesn't really mean all that much. This whole application is 75 properties, and they're all joined together. There's no properties in between. There's no properties left out. This whole area is all brought together. And I am the petitioner. And when I started this out, I was asked by people in Basin View subdivision to get involved in this. And I told them I would. I was retired. I had the time. And so I put together this application. I didn't ask anybody for any funds. I financed it myself, and I probably had all the signatures, the majority of signatures. I went out and talked to every neighbor that I could get a hold of. I do have another list of property owners that have signed after the fact, but it doesn't matter. The reason I went in early is I was trying to get this together before, so we wouldn't be here in July. The bottom line is we're trying to keep our neighborhood a residential neighborhood. We're trying to keep it from becoming a, what do you call it, a quasi, business district for 90 to 120 days of the year. We have a keen interest in keeping Beaver Creek as the way it is now. This is all north of Angler. We all know the issues with Angler, and I'm not going to bring that up tonight, but we're trying to keep this for what it's been for Chuck's 39 years on the creek. It's been quiet, it's been peaceful, it's been something that we've been proud of. We let our friends use it. We have people go over, people stay. I don't know if anybody's ever harassed anybody for coming up and down the creek. My whole deal with this is just to try to keep it private, trying to keep it residential for our enjoyment, for our family's enjoyment, for the future. So that's really all I got to say about it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a quick,
Sure.
maybe just one question. The petition that you took out, did it include a map of the area that you anticipated to be
Yes, sir.
the area? So it was, if it just said Basin View, it certainly included the boundary then?
When this first envisioned, the people that brought this to me, it was a Basin View thing, and I felt it was important to include the whole area, all the creek. We have a Facebook page, it's called Dull Chalk Ames, and so we've had that for a few years now. I mean, everybody's keenly interested in our neighbors and who's in our neighborhood and who's coming and going and that sort of thing. Yeah, there's a map, and it was all mapped out, and I had the map with me, and I had the land use tables with me. I mean, it really doesn't change all that much, but if you look at the land use tables, there's really not that much that's not allowed. If we're talking about lodging, we're talking about guiding, we're talking about automotive shops. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the land use tables. I mean, you can still have a business consumer services under a conditional use permit. You can still have professional offices in the community if you want to. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's still allowed. It's just basically what this does is it keeps the high traffic types of businesses out of the area. I mean, we've talked about the two conditional use permits that are on Ames Road. I can assure you that come April and May, the traffic is exponentially a lot more due to these two businesses. I've talked to both owners. They're both in favor of this. They realize that the community's grown up around their businesses, and they realize that when they're done, they don't want it to continue. So I tried to make sure that everybody was whole in this thing. I personally believe that the properties on Beaver Creek are more valuable privately than they are as a commercial type operation. And I also feel like if we ever do have a commercial operation on Beaver Creek in that area, especially Basin View, that'll definitely drop the property values of the surrounding property in the area, not only monetarily as far as money-wise, but the livability of the property because of the traffic, all the problems that are associated with these types of businesses. So this is our main focus.
Any other questions? I have one.
Sure.
So you're characterizing Beaver Creek, okay, and the area that you're describing that you want to rezone for R1, that is way upstream of the concentration of guide businesses that you described?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I mean, basically it borders it, but from this zone goes all the way down to the first business on Angler. So we're kind of trying to draw a line here between that type of operation and this type of operation. I mean, the businesses on Angler was it started off as real residential. It's still real residential, but I think there's 25 conditional use permits on Angler Drive, and it's been pretty well taken over by the guiding business, lodging business. And the traffic on the creek has got a lot more. These conditional use permits, Chuck is right, the conditional use permitting process is flawed. A lot of these permits were issued 25, 30 years ago to people that have one boat, one cabin, two cabins, two boats. They've been sold, they've been transferred. They've increased the size of their docks. They've brought in other operators, leased space to other operators, which has increased the traffic on Angler. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I really didn't want to get into the Angler thing tonight because, I mean, it is what it is. I think everybody here is aware of it. So. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is anyone else wish to speak?
Yeah, I do.
Young lady first.
All right, President?
Sure. Please.
Wait, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hey, you all.
Hello, my name is Katura Costello. I live on 385 Dolchak, and I would like to read this letter on behalf of my mother, Charlotte Coots, who wasn't able to be here today. In 2015, my husband and I decided to sell our home in Nikiski because at the time we were dealing with industrial factory noise in the middle of the night, fast-moving semi-trucks on the road in front of our property at all hours, trash thrown from vehicles, light pollution from businesses that moved into the neighborhood, kids constantly racing four-wheelers across our property, and lots of vehicle traffic. We anticipated that things would get worse because there was a proposal for a road project being discussed that would possibly reroute the Kenai Spur Highway right across our front yard. Because of this, we put our home up for sale and spent a considerable amount of time looking for a new home in a quiet neighborhood so that our young children could grow up in a stable and attractive residential environment. We decided to purchase our home on Dolchak Lane in Kenai because it was zoned by the city of Kenai as a single residence neighborhood, and because of the specific words in the subdivision covenants that our realtor reviewed with us before we signed the purchase agreement for our home. In the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions for Basin View Subdivision, Book 216, page 243, line 2 states, no lot shall be used for other than single-family residential purposes. Line 21 states, no obnoxious or offensive activity shall be carried on upon any lot, nor shall anything be done therein which may become an annoyance or nuisance to the neighborhood. When my husband and I realized that purchasing a home here in this subdivision gave us a contractual agreement between all lot owners within the subdivision that our neighborhood would stay a neighborhood, that our neighborhood would be protected from business traffic and noise, congestion, litter, and trespassing. We were especially pleased to see a no river access sign on Dolchak Lane that would help cut down on the general busyness of the summer vacation crowd that is tied to the use of the river. We assumed we could rely on the city of Kenai via the Zoning and Planning Commission to protect our neighborhood and our quality of life in our neighborhoods by zoning them appropriately and adhering to the integrity of the zoning. Last year, this was challenged when an individual purchased a property in our neighborhood with the specific intent of remotely running both a guide service and a vacation lodge in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood banded together and obtained signatures from a majority of the property owners in an attempt to stop conditional use permits being granted for this individual for both the guide service and the vacation lodge. During this attempt, we were told by a member of the city council that the covenants laid out in the purchasing paperwork in the packet for our homes were not even worth the paper they were written on, and it was suggested by this council member that we should instead try to get our neighborhood rezoned. That is why we are here today. We are in complete support of rezoning the Basin View subdivision from rural residential to rural residential 1. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone else wish to speak? Please. Just state your name and address for the
Good evening.
record.
I'm Mac Paget. I live at 855 Ames here in Kenai. You've seen us before. I hope you recognize a lot of these people. I'm here just to repeat the same message I gave you last time. Beaver Creek is what makes this a community. So you talk about Angler, you talk about Ames, you talk about Dolchak, other streets. Beaver Creek makes our community. We will fight to avoid any more conditional use permits on Beaver Creek. We've been here twice. We've been successful twice. We are taking your advice to have this thing rezoned. last time we were in here, I forget who made the comment, but as Ms. Coots also says, y'all said you ought to consider going to RR1. So here we are. We'll see how that changes the process, but we watch the conditional use permit application process relative to Beaver Creek, and we will continue to do that. Anybody? Didn't take 3 minutes.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Paget?
Maybe.
I have one.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, you spoke of the conditional use permit enforcement and management. Do you have any suggestions on how it could be improved?
you know, Jim Richardson has written some good improvements. I think the process relative to the Basin View subdivision had some suggestions in there for you.
Right.
I think in the interest of time and my lack of study on this issue, we'd be best to take that up in a different session.
The truth is out there somewhere.
It will set us free.
Thank you much. Anyone else wish to speak? No one else? Is there anyone from, I'm sorry, Mr. Baldwin. I'm working between my glasses and my real eyes here.
I understand the problem. Chuck was right. Our Basin View subdivision covenants are adequate to address the problem that we had to deal with last year from a pure legal standpoint. In fact, they're actually stricter than what the ordinance provides for. The problem is those covenants have to be enforced, if at all, by citizens suing citizens, by neighbors having to sue neighbors. And that's really what I'd like to see avoided. The unfortunate situation that happened last year as it unfolded, I think several of us were actually really concerned that this guy actually was going to get a conditional use permit in the neighborhood that had never seen a guide or lodge. The problem also is that this is not purely a Basin View subdivision issue before you tonight. There are other people that are not protected by these covenants who also have an interest in maintaining the neighborhood as it is. And those people would not ever be protected absent the RR1 issue and adequate enforcement of the special use permit kind of proceeding, which, as we have seen, is of dubious validity when it comes to protecting subdivisions and maintaining existing property. So I view this as kind of a preemptive action on the part of the folks that are behind it to try to avoid these kinds of problems happening in the future, so that the city is actually the enforcement officer instead of having the neighbors have to sue neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Baldwin? I have just one.
Sure.
That's the question of, for the conditional use permit process, do you have any suggestions for improvement? I know on the record you've said some, and perhaps we can go through it at some other time, and should the question come up again, would you be willing to comment?
Well, I've always got an opinion, but sometimes it's best not shared than when I can't articulate it adequately, and this is not a really good time for me to try.
Of course not, and of course not. I'm just offering a future
Yeah, no,
conversation.
thank you. I definitely think that there can be some tightening up, and should be, but the problem is you've always got people. You know, that whole process depends upon it being enforced by people. Depends on the quality of the individuals doing the enforcement. And that even changes from year to year, from commission to commission. So you can't really count on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Are there any remote attendees, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. There are no hands raised.
Okay, well, seeing no one else, we'll bring it back to council. Discussion for council? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Can we get an overview from the administration and maybe from the city manager just on the memo and what took place here over the last couple months with this?
Through the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Baisden. So as was mentioned earlier, the application received by the Planning Department in April, late April, and it was a request to rezone this area. And there's several pages in your packet that show the area that is proposed for rezone. The process of rezoning requires that a majority of the landowners in the area that's proposed for rezoning sign a petition. In this case, there were 46 signatures and I believe 72 parcels, so greater than 50% signed the petition, which allowed it to go forward. This did go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which they approved unanimously, suggesting or recommending that council approves the rezoning from RR to RR1. As far as the conditional use permits that are existing in the area that's proposed to be rezoned, they will be considered a non-conforming use, but they will be allowed to continue to operate, although they will not be allowed to expand. With one caveat, they are actually permitted to apply for a conditional use permit to allow an expansion of those activities on their property. But they are considered a non-conforming use, but again, they can continue to operate. The primary change from an RR to an RR1, let me get to that spot here. The intent of both the RR and the RR1 are actually the same. The primary differences between the two is that there are more principal permitted uses allowed in the RR district. There's actually a total of 6 principally permitted uses in the RR district and only 4 in the RR1. And then the other difference is the conditional use permit, as folks have been talking about here tonight. In the RR district, there's a total of 55 different activities that you can get a conditional use permit for. And in the RR district, that total is only 20. So that's the biggest difference between the two. It does eliminate the opportunity for a number of the types of activities or businesses that would be allowed in an RR district. They're not allowed in the RR1. And that's an overview, but I'm happy to answer additional questions.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Naxted, please.
Just following that, we heard testimony regarding this being spot zoning, and I don't have the definition, the city definition or Title 21 in front of me, having been on planning and zoning for many years. I have a differing opinion, but I was wondering if you might have a more exacting definition of what spot zoning is as far as how the city recognizes it.
Through the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Naxted. So I don't have the definition in front of me. Typically, spot zoning is considered spot zoning when the acreage is relatively small. There's some subjectivity to that, but generally, if it's less than 2 acres, spot zoning is something, it's considered spot zoning. It's also spot zoning if it is different in nature than the surrounding properties themselves. So if you had a large area that was rural residential, and then in the middle of that, you wanted to rezone it to commercial, that would be considered spot zoning, because it is to benefit just that one or very small number of landowners, but not the entire community itself. So in this case, this is a large area. It's all currently zoned rural residential. We're proposing, the proposal is to move it all to RR1. So by our definition, it would not qualify as spot zoning.
Thank you. Any other questions? And again, no one remotely? We're done. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll look peer over my glasses at you.
Through the Vice Mayor, Mr. Ostrander, thank you for that insight about spot zoning that brings greater clarity and understanding so that we can make a more informed decision about this. I graciously appreciate that.
Thank you. No other discussion? Okay. I just have one thing to say. What I've found is that our current conditional use permit situation can be tuned up just a little bit. In past discussions, Mr. Baldwin had some positive things to say, and I think we can, how can we strengthen the verbiage a little bit? I think, as is pointed out, our enforcement of our codes are important, and I know it's a high priority of our administration, and we will strive to do better and satisfy all. And I also have just a question about the people, how they're assigned to their addresses and the residences and all of that. But as Manager Ostrander said, there's the number of properties and the number of signatures, and it's a plurality that did sign the petition. I personally would have liked to have seen some more rehashing of our process, and I would have liked to have seen perhaps some more robust discussion as is developing amongst us here. I think we have genuine discussions and genuine viewpoints to reveal. So, having said that, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll. Please, Mr. Nexted.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I got.
No,
fell
that's
out of
fine.
on the-
I'm still struggling with my glasses.
Okay, I don't have mine on, so we're. But I just wanted to say that it's my intent to vote for this ordinance, and that I believe that the petition and the process has checked all of the appropriate boxes. There's a vast majority of the property owners are for this. It's not an extreme change in the zone, and we have the folks that are here today. And we had about a year ago the room full and standing out front that I can't, they gave similar type of testimony at that time regarding what they wanted in their subdivision. And that still carries some weight here with me. And it's not spot zoning by our definition, and totally appropriate. I can see no reason to deny the request. So I'll be voting for this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Vice Mayor Denning.
Please, Madam Clerk.
Vice Mayor, Councilmember Tia Winger, we can hear you.
Thank you. I too will be in support of this. I think we've heard testimony through the last year from the residents and their frustrations. We've advised them to take this next step in the process, and I'm happy to see them come together and bring this forward. And I think the still underlying issue is code enforcement. And I think this is something we're going to hear more about, is code enforcement. And so as much as I feel this is moving this ahead, we still need to be mindful that code enforcement will still be an underlying problem for the neighborhood. So I would like us to continue to focus on this and work on our code enforcement. I will be in support of this. Planning and zoning was in full support of this. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, that's it? Okay. Okay, gotcha.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Glendening. I too will be in support of this ordinance. We have a rural community that is valued by its residents, its neighbors, and the inherent value of that area is a rural community. And they're simply taking the next step, basically moving a rural community to a rural community, basically with sideboards, just making it a little more structured. And the thought or the objection that, well, if we take this step, it will lower the value of the properties in there, because then you can't sell a piece of property for a larger profit, and with the insinuation that somebody could come in and ask for a conditional use permit, well, the covenants of the neighborhood are there already. And by your covenants, that can't be done, because your will not let it be done. So moving from RR to RR1, in my mind, is just, like I said, you're taking a rural community and you're just putting sideboards on it. You're not really changing the inherent ability to sell or buy real estate based on business opportunities, because the covenants in that area don't allow for businesses. So that's why I will be supporting it.
Thank you. I'll just have one more comment. I'm persuaded by Mr. Eubanks' discussion. I'm persuaded by Mr. Baldwin's discussion. I'm persuaded by Mr. Pageant's discussion. And I would have hoped that we could have maybe resolved it all in one roll of the dice, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's agreement that we can perhaps focus on a conditional use permit process that is transparent and equitable to all, and I'm sure we will be working on that in the near future. It'll be I don't know, musical term variations on a theme, or if you're riding a horse, you're just neck reining it. But I'm pleased with tonight's discussion, and having said that, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Glendening?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance number 3295, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. We are now on item D2, and this is a resolution number 2022-52, authorizing a contract award to supply operational chemicals for the city water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities, sponsored by the administration. Pleasure of council. Thanks to all who participated.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-52.
I'll second it.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there anyone from the general public who wishes to speak to Resolution 2022-52? Is there any remote attendee? Okay. Seeing no one else, we'll bring it back to council. Discussion, please.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Any objections? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Unanimous consent was requested.
I'm sorry,
Unanimous consent was requested.
there was no objection. Okay. That brings us to item D3. That's, stand by. Did we have Ms. Winger on this?
Councilmember Winger is on the telephone.
I support this, the unanimous.
Okay, so we don't have to call the roll. No, she is. Yeah. Okay, now, this brings us to item D3. Resolution 2022-53, and we are authorizing a service agreement for the personal use fishery dumpsters and portable restrooms, sponsored by the administration. Pleasure of council, a motion, please.
Move to adopt Resolution 2022-53.
Is there a second?
I'll second that and request unanimous consent.
Is there anyone wish to speak? Any remote attendee? No? Okay, seeing no one else, we'll bring it back to council discussion. Okay, unanimous? All right, any objections? All right, thank you. Turn the page. We are now on item D4, and this is resolution number 2022-54, authorizing a service contract extension to provide refueling services for city facility fuel tanks sponsored by the administration. Pleasure of council.
I move to adopt resolution 2022-54.
Is there a second?
I'll second and ask for unanimous.
Is there anyone from the general public that wishes to speak to resolution 2022-54? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council discussion. Okay, no discussion. Unanimous was requested. Are there any objections? None? Passes unanimously. This brings us to item D5. And this is resolution number 2022-55. And we are amending the facility management agreement for winter services provided by Redline Sports at the City of Kenai Multipurpose Facility, sponsored by the administration. Pleasure of council.
Move to adopt resolution 2022-55.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Baston. Is there anyone from the general public who would like to speak to resolution 2022-55? Any remote? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council. Any discussion from council?
I'd ask for unanimous.
Unanimous was requested. Any objections?
I have a question for administration.
Yes?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Gabriel. I was hoping to get a 30,000-foot view from administration, specifically about the scope of work. And then I believe we were going to do some testing to make sure everything was good to go before we put ice back in. So I was just hoping to get an overview of that.
Through the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Winger. So I could talk a little bit about the scope of the contract, and Mr. Curtin's actually in the audience here, and he can talk about the work that's been completed on the facility and where we're at with that. So the reason that we're extending this contract by essentially what is 2 months is because when we originally said that we were not going to have summer ice at the facility this summer, and also Soldotna was not going to have summer ice for the facility, KPHA, the local youth hockey organization, came to us and requested that we get ice in the facility by August 1st, which would allow their comp teams to get on the ice at the same time as they usually do, and at the same time that the comp teams from other parts of the state get on the ice. So at that time, we sat down and I talked to Mr. Curtin, and he felt that he could get the necessary work done in time to get ice in August. So we told KPHA that we'd commit to doing that. Mr. Curtin's been working on it and has his crew working on it diligently all summer. I know they're nearing completion of it now. So this extends the contract with Redline Sports by 2 months, and the terms and conditions of the agreement that we have with Redline Sports as far as the scope of work is the same for these 2 additional months as it is normally during the winter months, which is ice maintenance of the facility as far as garbage, cleaning the facility, that sort of thing. So that's the scope of this. Scope has not changed at all. It's just extending it for those additional 2 months to provide ice for our local youth comp hockey teams. And like I said, Mr. Curtin, you could talk a little bit about the readiness of the facility for opening in August.
Thank you, City Manager Ostrander. Council Member Winger, yes. So we actually finished. They're called roof purlins. The steel roofing members that were extremely rusted have now all been coated and treated. So we finished that work the last couple of days of June, actually. And that work was completed under budget. We weren't sure how long that was going to take, and we actually met the timeline that I had hoped to achieve. So we have some funding left in the budget, and we have now moved on to the larger steel beams in the facility. And you might recall these were the large ones that had a little bit of algae growing on. So when you walk in and look directly above the rink, they had a little bit of green algae growing on those. We are now in the process of coating those. So I have the first, as of today, the first beam is coated. They're on the second one as we speak. And I expect that work to continue for about the next 2 weeks. And then we will be essentially done with the coatings portion, what we call the corrosion mitigation portion of the project. So I've been very pleased with that, and it's been successful. So, and I would throw a little plug. I believe we've got a Rotary Club rummage sale, I believe, happening this weekend. So if you happen to be in the area and you want to take a peek at it, throw them a little plug. You'll have some access to take a peek in there if you're around for that this weekend. So. But we still have about 2 weeks left of that work. Some of the other tasks, we are still quoting some of the mechanical, putting up fans. That is still in process. That will be ongoing. I don't believe I'm going to have all of that finished by August 1st, but I don't necessarily have to have that. We'll be working on some additional improvements that will be, I don't need Redline Sports. They could be in it when I'm doing that work. It won't be an issue for me. So that work will continue for a little bit. But the bulk of the protection that we were looking to get, we did achieve this summer. So I was very pleased with that. Happy to answer any other questions you have.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you,
Basin.
Mr. Curtin. That answers all my questions.
Mr. Basin?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Did I miss it, Scott? So we will have ice in by the 1st of August?
We will have ice in by the 1st of August.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Ask for unanimous?
Yeah, unanimous has been asked for. Any objections? Unanimous. We have approved this unanimously. We are now in new business, and we're all the way down to, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I clicked the wrong one here. We are now item D6, Resolution 2256. And this is approving amendments to the standard lease form for the lease of airport reserve lands between the City of Kenai and the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities, Division of Facility Service -10 on Lot 4A FBO Subdivision Number 11, sponsored by the administration. Pleasure of council.
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-56.
Second.
Is there anyone from the general public that would like to speak to the resolution? Any remote? Okay, seeing no one, we will bring it back to the council. Discussion from council. Mr. Nackstead.
Thank you. For the city manager, the city attorney said we were kind of giving up a little bit of what we normally would have in a contract, but under the circumstances with the state of Alaska, perhaps we're not giving up so much. Is that your concurrence with that?
Through the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Nackstead. Yeah, this is, we're amending our standard lease form here, but, Mr. Bloom does provide some solid justification, particularly considering the existing fire season they're in. This lease is a lease that supports fire suppression efforts in our area. We're in a strong financial position with the state, and there's a clear public benefit to this lease. So he has also stated that he'd like to go through the exercise of actually adopting an amended lease form that would be used for future state contracts, which is probably something that you'll see coming forward. But for this summer and for this lease, it's certainly his recommendation, and I agree with that this is in the city's best interest to move forward.
I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Why would we treat the state different than any other person leasing from us?
Vice Mayor Glendening, sometimes when you're working with the state, they are less willing to work with the city as other private entities might be, and they are in a stronger negotiating position than other private entities might be as well.
I mean, like they provide the fire protection.
They do provide fire protection, yes.
Point well taken.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous was requested. Any objections? Passed unanimously. Councilman Winger, you're on board with that too also?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Okay, now that brings us to item G9. Councilman Sonart,
Yes, sir.
did you have something you wanted to do, or are you going to stick with us?
I would like to go through the action approval,
Okay,
but thank you, and then I would like to leave after that.
thank you. All right, that brings us to G9, and this is an action approval. It's the City of Kenai Police Department appointment to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Emergency Service Communication Advisory Board, sponsored by the administration. Pleasure of council. Mr. Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to appoint Police Chief David Ross to the Kenai Peninsula Borough's Emergency Services Communications Advisory Board and appoint Lieutenant Ben Lingham as the alternate member to the board.
Second.
Anybody from the public wish to speak? Anybody remote? Okay.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Any objections? Okay. Seeing none, passes unanimously. Or is that your job to say that? Okay, thank you. Please note that Councilman Sonart is leaving. And we are now to committee reports. We have Council on Aging, and that would be Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have no report other than the next meeting is on the 14th, but as reported earlier, and it should be in your packet, there's going to be a dedication of the greenhouse, and going off memory, I think it's the 15th at 2 o'clock, this Friday,
All right, that's a Friday, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I believe.
Airport Commission, Councilmember Baston.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Glendenning. Nothing to report from the Airport Commission. Our next meeting is July 14th.
July 14th, see you there. Harbor Commission, Councilmember Petty.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Glendenning. I have no report, and our next time that we will gather will be on August the 8th. Thank you.
Okay, Parks and Rec Commission, Councilmember Winger, did you sit in for me on that?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Glendenning. The Parks and Recs Commission will not be meeting this month because they are getting busy with our spruce bark mitigation as well as gearing up for the personal use fishery. So they will meet again on Thursday, August 4th at 6 o'clock in Chambers.
Okay, August 4th. I have the Planning and Zoning report it's from the June.
Vice Mayor,
Go, sorry.
before you start, if I could make a correction.
So,
The problem with doing things off of memory, the dedication for the greenhouse is actually Tuesday, the 12th at 3 o'clock.
that's Tuesday, the 12th at 3 o'clock.
That's correct.
And it's July.
Yes, this year.
Okay, I just add, sometimes, never mind. Thank you. I will now talk about the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which was on June 22nd, 7 p.m. here in the chambers. And we had a resolution, PZ 2022-15. It's a preliminary subdivision plat of Christine Subdivision, Jarig Edition, submitted by McLean Consulting on behalf of Will and Becky Jarg. And what this was it was approving a preliminary plat that would allow a restaurant and a brewery. And this will be right by where the road goes down to the Port of Kenai LLC, right in that area. It's right by by Duke's, across the street, and so it'll be a welcome addition to our community. And then it was passed unanimously. There also was then the following resolution, PZ 2022-14. It's an application for a conditional use permit for a restaurant brewery for the property described as Lot 3, Christine Subdivision Number 1, located at 992 Bridge Access, Kenai, submitted by Will Jarg of Kenai, Alaska. And this is the companion piece to the plat that was authorized. And what this is it's a successor company to the old Cassix Brewery. And so they plan on having a brewery and a restaurant there. And then on one of their lots, they would have a residence that they would create, and then the lot in the middle is undecided at this point. So I believe it's a welcome addition to our community. They have ability to tie into existing sewer water that is right in that area, and so it should be easy peasy for them to get up and running. We had an action approval recommending city approve a resolution approving the sale of 1107 Second Street to Amy Fisher, and this was approved 6-0 unanimous. And what this does, it allows Amy Fisher to purchase a adjoining lot to her property for her purposes. And then also there was an action approval, 6-0 it was approved, recommending the city council approve ordinance XXXX2022, approving conditional use of city-owned parcels to the Central Peninsula Habitat for Humanity. These parcels in this area previously had been authorized for development by Habitat for Humanity, but COVID and economics interfered, so they'll be coming to us again for consideration for, I believe it's 3 remaining lots. Is that true? Okay, and so we'll have the discussion with them. I know, if I can just pontificate a little bit, the city really needs low-cost housing, and so I know we can come up with a very favorable arrangement with Habitat for Humanity. And the next meeting date for planning and zoning will be the 27th of July. The meeting of July 13th was canceled. Beautification, there was no oh, I'm sorry, do you have that, Henry?
No, I was wondering if I could ask a question on your report.
Certainly.
Just for clarification, the Jarg development is not the property that is currently being excavated and cleared. It's across that access road.
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
I just thought
yeah.
somebody might jump to that conclusion.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It would be easy to.
Thank you for the clarification. No, it's a larger property, and as you go down the road, it's on the right-hand side. The parcel that is being prepared now is smaller, and it's on the left-hand side as you're going towards the river. Thank you. Mini grant.
Beautification?
You got beautification?
Well,
okay.
I thank you, Vice Mayor. So on behalf of Councilmember Sonart, beautification has no report.
I hate you. Okay, mini grant steering committee, Mayor Gabriel has no support. That brings us to report of the mayor. On behalf of Mayor Gabriel, he asked me just to relate this simple observation that the 4th of July parade was an overwhelming success for our community. Was very well attended, very well received, enjoyed by all. The The participation on the park strip was overwhelmingly enjoyed by the public. The city was crowded. Everyone enjoyed themselves, had fun, and we're looking forward to next year. Happy birthday, America. Now, report of the mayor. Just on my behalf, I would just say that it's been a pleasure this past year serving as your vice mayor and working with all of you, and Mayor Gabriel and I have collaborated and very perhaps had animated discussions, but all has been resolved successfully, I think. And I'm looking forward now to this new season of the administration. You've had some significant changes, Manager Ostrander, and I wholeheartedly support your selection of personnel to fill these very, very, very important positions, and I know we will be successful in the future going on. And now we are to administration reports, and you get to come back.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Glendening. Yeah, I'll just go off of that. Yeah, the planning department mass resignation was a little bit of a bump, but super pleased to have Max Best and Willie Anderson back helping us out, as well as Katie Rector, the former admin assistant, is helping too. So we have an interim but very functional planning department right now, so I'm pleased with that. We are continuing to actively recruit. As you know, recruitment is really difficult right now. We already went out for 3 weeks for the planning director. I've extended that for another 3 weeks, so we're going to continue to search high and low for our next planning director. As far as my reports, on the 21st, I actually went to the Assembly Committee meeting and testified in support of the resolution they were considering for the Soldovia Quarry, where they were proposing to provide rock at no cost to the city. That did pass unanimously, which I think most of council is aware. On the 29th of June, Scott Curtin and I met with Jocelyn Balloon and David Post of DOT to discuss local projects and upcoming grant opportunities. A couple of the things we discussed, so the council weighed in on the need for lighting on the Spur Highway last year, a resolution of support. That lighting is going to be installed on the entire length, so that's good news. We talked about the possibility for funding the last section of the bike path that needs to be completed to complete the Unity Trail. As you know, we're working on the path from Beaver Loop to the Spur Highway. From Beaver Loop to bridge access needs to be completed at some point. They were non-committal, as you can expect, but it's something that they're very aware of, and something that I think we may have an opportunity to pursue funding here in the near future. We also talked about the possibility of underpasses in the city that improve connectivity and also pedestrian safety. Right now, with Bridge Access Road and the Spur Highway bisecting our city, if we could get underpasses installed, that would improve the ability of our trails to connect, and also just the trail system itself, and then also, of course, pedestrian safety, bike safety. And there actually is potentially funds out there available for things like that as well. There's two primary grant programs that they're promoting right now that are a part of the federal package, and they can be used for city streets or pathways, and they're called the Community Transportation Program, which is for city streets, and then Transportation Alternatives Program. The unfortunate thing is on those, it may mean that we may need planning before we can position ourselves for these grant funds, so we may have a planning step that we have to take before we actually go and apply for these grants, which would push us back a period of time. We removed all the hazard trees at Municipal Park this last week and also at the cemetery. It was an extensive project, but we were able to get that done. We contracted that out. Also, our folks did remove 15 or 16 hazard trees at the Little League ball fields as well. Slash disposal site is going well. It's too early to tell right now if it's going to fill up before October 2nd, which is the date we were scheduled for closure for the year. The stats, I do have the stats for June for the site, and We had 260 visits to the site, and each time someone visits, they estimate the number of acres that they actually treated, the number of trees that they took down. And according to that information provided by the public through our attendant on site there, 46 acres of area has been treated, in other words, mitigated of dead and dying spruce bark beetle trees. So it is going very well. Each one of you should have our emergency operations plan in front of you. The reason reason we provided that to you tonight is that we are going to have a resolution at your next meeting to approve it. And I wanted to make sure council had what amounts to almost a month to look that over before the resolution at the next meeting. And last is Bluff Stabilization Project, which I always get an update, but there is no update for tonight. And that's all I have, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions of Manager Gabriel? Excuse me.
I have a question for Manager Ostrander.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, can we get an update on the dog park and where the dog park project is?
Thank you.
Through the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Winger, Mr. Curtin can provide you an update on that. He's the project manager for that project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the city manager. Yes, so the dog park is ongoing. We've had some challenges with it. I did have Mike Brown with the Salamantas was out on Friday, week and a half ago, and he was able to clear the additional fence line. So the additional property that we granted, he did go out and clear about a 10-foot wide path through that entire area. The piece of equipment that he brought out, I was under the impression he was bringing a forestry mulcher that was able to take some larger trees down, and he had a little different piece of equipment on a Bobcat that could not do that. So Brad Walker, the Parks and Rec director, I'm in coordination with him. He has staff that's going to go and finish taking down some of the larger trees that are in the way of where the new fence will be installed. That work's going to take place next week. And then I've been in communications with Fireweed Fencing, who hasn't been great, unfortunately, getting back with responses. But I'm trying to get them back the following week to put the fence up in the new final location for them. Above and beyond that, I'm in constant communication actually with the team several times a week. I know that they're working on other volunteers and other apparatus activities and things like that for the dogs. I met with Jeff Twait, who's volunteering to actually build the pavilion. He has a materials list, which I haven't seen yet, but we're working on getting quotes for that. And then for myself, I'm looking at city staff through my streets department, working on putting in a culvert and a pathway up to where the pavilion is going to end up going. And we're going to likely dig that pavilion pad out ourselves and then have somebody pour the concrete. So that's where we are today. Happy to answer any other questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Curtin.
Mr. Curtin, I graciously appreciate that. Are you keeping records for the city staff, time-wise, from the different departments that are being utilized on this dog park?
We are.
Thank you. I'd like to have a enumeration of that when that's available.
Okay.
Do you have an idea when the park will be completed and ready for occupants?
I don't have a good answer, to be honest with you. You know, my hope is here by, the end of the month, within the next 30 days, that we'll have the fencing resolved. We'll essentially have the area fenced and the concrete pad placed. I can tell you that, my communications with everyone right now is everyone is so flooded with work that trying to get people to actually show up and do things, it's been very challenging. Concrete in particular has been challenging. I've been reaching out to concrete companies on a variety of, not just this job, but other tasks, and everyone's just really busy right now. And when you couple that with coordinating with volunteers and things, it's I'm throwing darts at a very fast-moving dartboard. So some are good and some are not. But I think we'll have the area likely usable in 60 days, but I don't think it's going to be done. I think there's going to be ongoing work that's going to have to take place. My hope is we need to fix the grass area. The hydro seeding and stuff that was done is not really going to be viable for long-term maintenance and mowing. It's just really rough out there. There's still a lot of debris in the field, and we're going to try and clean that up, likely bring in some additional topsoil, power rake that, and then replant some additional seed. But I want to do that after the fence is where it needs to be, and we get some of the other traffic that's going to have to be going on top of it. And my hope is I can get that done before before fall arrives. So it's all on everyone kind of showing up when they tell me they're going to and following through. So, but I'm in regular communication with folks. It's just it's not a normal contract for me where I'm holding all the cards and the leverage here, right? So this is I have to be a little more politically correct when coordinating with some of the volunteers. I mean, we appreciate all the help that we're getting. I mean, like Mike Brown showing up when he did was fantastic. I mean, he did a great job going back there. It wasn't what I was expecting it to look like when he was done, so we had to kind of change some gears there. But it's moving forward.
Well,
I appreciate everyone's patience.
Oh, no, we understand, and you do a very good job of explaining the situation, the conditions, and have reasonable expectations for us to expect what you're going to do. And thank you. City Attorney. City Attorney has no report. This is a recorded message. City Clerk.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I forwarded to you guys earlier information about the AML Summer Conference. Please get in contact with me if you would like to attend. Also, I will be attending portions of the State of Alaska election training next week. July 12th, they're training their groups for the August 16th primary, and our candidate nomination petition packets for city offices will be ready mid-July. Candidate filing period begins on August 1st, and I thought I'd update you since we don't see each other again until 3rd. So those will be out there on the street probably by the end of next week, and people can start filing for office in my office starting August 1st at 8 a.m.
Thank you. We will now go to additional public comment. Anybody from the public wishes to address the council at this time? Anybody remote? Okay. Council comments, may we start with, sorry?
You skipped over me the first go around, so I'm here with
I
the
know,
second
I
go
know.
around.
Usually you're more purposeful in your stride. You were stealthy
I'm
today.
right here, right now.
I know, you've been staring me down. I've been avoiding you. Go ahead,
No,
please.
no. I got skipped over at Chamber today, so I'm a little pissed coming into this tonight. Simple stuff. Marion Nelson, Kenai Art Center. The show this month is the Potter's Guild Clay on Display, their annual show, and we, the board for the Art Center, negotiated is too heavy a word for it, but we came to an agreement as far as our annual schedule as to who would get July, because obviously it's a great month to have a show in the center with a lot of people walking around Old Town and just general upbeat or uptick of everything in this time of the year. So this is a really good thing that the Potter's Guild, which occupies, of course, the Pottery Studio in the building, and they have outdone themselves big time this time. The show is open today to the public, noon to 5, but the reception is tomorrow night, 5 to 7, and there are 150 pieces of pottery in this show. It's just outstanding, and it's a very, very interesting show. Large pieces, little pieces, all handled in with great proficiency, I have to say. The Potter's Guild gives themselves a challenge every year to create items around a theme, and the theme this year is to create garden art. So there's some very, very large pieces, like so, made from a very short gal, as well as her husband, who makes very large pieces on a regular basis. Anyway, there's kind of something for everybody in this show, from very sweet, well-handled, smaller pieces to very large pieces that would be suitable outdoors, as well as all the usual gorgeous pieces that can be on your table or wherever. So it's an extremely interesting show. The other thing that the Potter's Guild does every year during the show is a kind of a raffle, in that you can buy or donate an amount, that's a very small amount, for a chance on a mug. And then you have a number, and the numbers are drawn at the end of the evening, and there's a certain amount of mugs, and if you're lucky, you get one. If not, you don't. So it's just a fun thing to add to it. It's a great, great show. The gallery is filled. It's really, really super. The other thing is, a couple other things. You know, we keep looking at the building overall, as well as what goes on inside. And while it has certainly, the Art Center has improved its look and serviceability to the community greatly in the last 2 years, the outside is an issue, and it's kind of starting to bubble to the top here. So we have thoughts like, well, what can we do to even just the front to make it look a little spiffier, a little more contemporary, a little more fun, a little bit more like an art center. And some of the thoughts have been, well, how about if we paint it black and have some great graphics on it, or something. All things that we thought of. Also thought about corrugated metal on it. How cool would that be? And some people just hate that idea on the board. So that's churning around, and but before that can happen to any of the walls, and Mr. Curtin knows this very well, that there's a lot of holes in that wall, in those walls. It is, you know, like it needs some blasting, So that's bubbling toward the front burner instead of the back burner. I can't think of anything else right now other than we keep moving forward, looking for grants. No new news from Rasmussen as far as the grant requesting help for the flooring or the floor, I should say, in the gallery, which again, we plan to have it be a ground/polished cement, not polished to be slippery, but just ground to the point where it's easier to maintain, not slippery, and get rid of that super ugly piece of carpet that's in there right now. Any questions from you all? And be sure and invite all of you tomorrow night too for the opening.
Thank you. Any questions? No remote? No?
Great parade yesterday, man.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And thank you for your continued enthusiasm and service to our community.
Sure.
We go back a lot of years. You had a health food store back over in the mall.
Let's not go back that far.
Well, yeah, but it got me this far. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wish to speak? No? Okay, no remote? We'll go to council comments. We'll start with Council Member Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Glendening. I was not at attendance to the 4th of July parade celebration. I was in Glacier View for their annual car launching 4th of July celebration. And what a neat experience. This may be their last year doing their car launching due to the Matanuska Glacier is melting at record speed, and the river is at high surging levels and is taking out most of the river property. So that would prevent them from hosting more shows. So we're definitely thankful we made it up there. It was a great time. We enjoyed 80-degree weather. And I was hoping to bring some of that weather back, but I failed. As far as some of my other comments, I've talked about helmet safety with our youth on ATVs. And again, I would just like to remind parents and adults as well to wear their helmets, be safe, And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Student Representative Thibodeau? No? Okay. Councilmember Petty, please.
Thank you. I was down in Seward celebrating the 4th of July down there and had the privilege to witness the new women's record coming back to the United States. And that was 47 minutes and 48 seconds. I had 2 daughters who ran the mountain safely, and it was a wonderful celebration. And I had the opportunity to pass through town and see all the wonderful flags of the United States waving, and it made me very proud of our city and our country, and look forward to a successful PU fishery that's coming up really soon, and welcome all of our visitors and guests to our fair city, and hope that they have a splendid time, and look forward to seeing y'all out and about, and see you in August. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Baston.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have a few comments here from Councilmember Sonart, who wanted to remind the public that Triumphant Theater has Tarzan that will be showing July 9th and July 16th at 1 o'clock. If you don't have your tickets, you should come out to it. I think that Councilmember Sonart is going to be the guest conductor, it sounds like. And the Kenai Peninsula Orchestra also July 30th at Kenai Central High School at 7 o'clock. And I have no other comments.
Thank you. Councilman Matt Naxted.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank Will Jerrig, a longtime friend and schoolmate, actually, you know, for his vision down by the Kenai River and all of that. And one probably doesn't necessarily have to do with the other, but it kind of works out. You know, we have the riverfront development plan that he attended several of, and I think that part of the city's vision is it's actually being implemented before we have the plan completed, I guess, and that would be an example of that, kind of what we were looking for and discussing. So I think that his forward thinking it's just the first block, you know, in working that out. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be great. The 4th of July parade was wonderful. I was down there and was fortunate enough to be invited to help the chamber score and grade the floats and all of that, which is quite a task when you have about 58 of them that are on a schedule and another 20 that weren't, you know, and then they just keep coming, you know, and it's kind of overwhelming. I've done it a number of years, but it's always fun, a fun thing to do, and of course it was a very good time down at the grass strip too. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I just have one observation. This weekend we had a softball tournament here, and it was well attended, and our Parks and Recs department worked hard to get the fields in shape. A little dry, a little dusty, but you know, we'll improve our approach, and we had just a wonderful turnout and good response, and you know, just another successful piece of the puzzle for our 4th of July celebration that we're all so proud of. And I think that's it. There is no executive session, no pending items, and the adjournment is now. Thank you.